This is Steve Bannon, a man who is suddenly at the center of American power. Bannon is Donald Trump's chief White House strategist. It's a position that Trump created just for him. But Bannon is also a filmmaker. In the past 15 years, he's written and directed 9 documentaries. And if you watch those movies closely, they reveal that Steve Bannon has a unique vision for America's future. One of the first things you notice about Bannon's films is that they deal in a lot of pretty mainstream Republican and conservative ideas. Bill Clinton was corrupt, Obama played too much golf, protesters get paid to protest. But those ideas are not uniquely Bannon's. If you're really trying to figure him out, you need to look at how he uses those conservative ideas as a springboard for his own philosophy. And you can find that in 3 of his movies in particular, in his films that deal most explicitly with history. These 3 movies lay out Bannon's theory of the past and his vision of what is coming. Call it the Bannon trilogy. These are the movies you have to watch to understand what Steve Bannon wants. Bannon's first movie was 2004's In the Face of Evil, Reagan's War in Word and Deed. That's the whole title. And it establishes a few things that you'll see again and again in Bannon's movies. First, it's almost entirely made up of archival and stock footage. Second, it starts with a beloved conservative idea. In this case, the story of how Ronald Reagan beat communism.
Tear down this wall.
But then Bannon takes that familiar idea and he uses it as a vehicle to propose his own theory of history. The idea of an eternal conflict between the West and the forces of evil.
It came with many faces, many names.
Bannon's narrator explains that Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan and Fascist Italy and Soviet Russia were, at most, cosmetically different from each other. They were just different faces of the same thing. Bannon calls that thing
the beast, the beast, the beast, the beast.
In the Face of Evil is a movie about the Cold War, but it avoids saying the phrase Cold War. Instead, Bannon refers to it as
the Third World War, the longest global conflict in history.
Bannon is saying that there wasn't a Cold War. There was a real war that the Soviets started, but that most Western leaders didn't want. They wanted peace or coexistence, so they ignored it. But by ignoring evil, they only made the beast stronger.
We see around us today
Reagan alone was not afraid of war. And because of that, he saved the world from evil. And Bannon is not a subtle filmmaker. He wants to shock you into realizing that there's a new incarnation of the beast. So he ends the movie with some really gratuitous 9/11 footage. This is barely any of it, but this is the final shot of the film. It's a long dissolve between Hitler and Mussolini and Muslim extremists. We get the point. In the Face of Evil is all about this recurring battle between good and evil. And in his next movie, Generation Zero from 2010, Bannon gets more specific about how that battle keeps recurring. Like in the Face of Evil, Generation Zero is also super heavy with stock footage. And it too is framed by a story conservatives like. In this case, how runaway government spending caused the financial crisis.
They have printed more money than has ever been printed in the entire history of the United States put together.
But it also contains maybe the most important element of Bannon's theory of history. In Generation Zero, we are told that all of human history is on a looping, unchanging 80-year cycle. And the cycle is always the same. It starts with what Bannon calls a crisis, a period of enormous violence that totally upends society.
It's a time when there's a lot of genocide, a lot of killing, a lot of starvation, usually a lot of disease.
Then, out of that crisis, a new social order emerges, and there's a time of prosperity and stability. But then, over several decades, that order inevitably unravels. And that leads to another crisis, and the 80-year cycle starts over again. Bannon did not invent this theory, but his belief in it gives us another really important piece of his worldview. Not only is war inevitable, The cycle only goes in one direction. You can't get to peace and prosperity without a crisis first. Generation Zero says that U.S. history has seen 3 crises: the American Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II. So not just wars. The Iraq War would not qualify here. These are moments of national trauma.
These become new founding moments of our nation's history.
And that not only are we due for the next crisis, we are in it. The 2008 financial crisis marked the beginning of it.
History is seasonal, and winter is coming.
But what Generation Zero doesn't say is what comes next. And that brings us to Bannon's most recent movie, 2016's Torchbearer, narrated by the Duck Dynasty guy. And here we get the final piece in Bannon's cyclical good versus evil view of history: Christianity. Torchbearer goes moment by moment through Western civilization and explains it with Christianity. So, Rome fell because they persecuted Christians.
It was destined to fade and die.
The American Revolution was great because its founders acknowledged a creator.
You know why you can have life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness? Because they come from God.
But the French Revolution led to terror because they only believed in the rights of man.
Translation, your rights don't come from God, they come from the nation.
And the Holocaust wasn't the result of demagoguery or anti-Semitism. The Holocaust happened because of German atheist philosophy.
When Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, all hell broke loose. And the end result is this place, Auschwitz.
And then Torchbearer turns to America, and its verdict is not good. Because modern-day America has turned away from God.
We are no longer image bearers. We are crutch-driven animals following our instincts.
But Torchbearer's ending offers a clue for how America can become great again.
ISIS is on the march.
Just like Bannon's first movie, Torchbearer ends with a montage of horrors at the hands of Muslim terrorists. This time it's ISIS persecuting and murdering people. But Bannon uses audio of reports describing the murder of Christians.
Christianity under attack tonight. Horrific violence facing Christians. The threat to Christians has never been greater.
And his point here is clear. War has been declared on Christianity. The Bannon trilogy gives us 3 ways to look at America's past and future. 1 says America lost its greatness when it lost its faith. 1 says that American greatness will only return after a devastating war. And 1 says that America and the West should welcome the fight against evil. And these 3 stories add up to something. Steve Bannon's movies make the case for a war. And not like another Iraq or Vietnam. Bannon's films call for a war that resets the whole world. But maybe they're just movies.